You know, some people view God as, you got all kinds of different views of God that are not accurate, but some people view God as this big grandfather in the sky, and that now that he's older, you know, it's been 6,000 years after all, since he created people, he's gotten softer and he's not as angry, and he's kind of softened his stance against sin. And some people literally believe that the things that the Bible teaches are wrong aren't that bad. They're really not wrong. You can do them. I mean, we know that society's developed and morals are more lax today, and God's gone along with that. But it's just not true. God's never changed. He still feels the same way about sin. Now, our relationship with Him has changed because of the new birth and because of what Jesus has done, but God has not changed. So, just because forgiveness is now available and it's part of our kingdom and part of the world, part of the gospel, it doesn't mean God has changed on His view of sin. He hates sin. He loves the sinner, but He hates sin. And you know, that could be said in Old Testament times. God loved the sinner, and He hated the sin in Old Testament times. He wasn't able to relate to them the same way as He can relate to us now after Jesus paid the price. But God has not changed. So the things that were an abomination to God in the Old Testament are still an abomination to God in the New Testament. He hasn't changed His values, and I think it's important that I think it's very important that we understand that, because, as I said before, forgiveness is so easy to receive. It's free, and we get the idea that, you know, that it was cheap and it really doesn't matter what you do. And God must have changed His mind about all these things. He was so hard in the Old Testament. You know, He couldn't be merciful in the Old Testament like He can be today after the resurrection of Jesus. So the thing that changed is that Jesus did His work and He paid the price. That's what's changed. But sin, what was wrong then is wrong now, and what was right then is right now. That has not changed. Our relationship with God has changed, and God's ability to forgive, that's definitely changed. But don't think that sin is any less evil or wrong or of a consequence now as it was in the Old Testament. That's just not true. And then let's go on to number 7. Forgiveness is not something that you've earned. No matter how faithful, how good you are, how much you've given, how much you've sacrificed, you have not and cannot earn forgiveness. It's so easy to slip back into a works mentality, but there are certain things that Jesus did for us that we can't ever earn. You'll never earn healing. You'll never earn forgiveness. You can never earn righteousness. You can never earn your entrance into heaven. These things are given to us from God because of what Jesus did. And it's so easy to receive forgiveness and be born again and then put yourself on some kind of works program. Now, as I took some time before in saying, we do want to do good works, and we are expected to live a righteous life, live a good life, a life within the boundaries that God has set for us in His Word, moral boundaries and financial boundaries. All of these things are important, but we are not now on the works program where if you go to church every week and you give in the offering, then you can get away with more, or you can be forgiven of more than if you didn't do those things. We are never going to be on that kind of program, because forgiveness cannot be earned. It cannot be purchased. And there's just no way that you can work your way into heaven, or work your way into God's good favor, work your way into God's grace. That's not how the kingdom works. So I got an example here First, let me read Ephesians 1:7. It says, "In Him we have redemption through His blood, the forgiveness of sins, according to the riches of His grace." This will always be the way forgiveness comes. It will never come any other way other than through His blood, the forgiveness of sins. If you are a Christian for 100 years and you sin, you're going to be forgiven because of His blood, not because you've been faithful for 100 years. God doesn't owe us forgiveness because we've sacrificed or lived for Him or did something heroic in His name or sacrificed in His name something in our life. The Bible does talk about people who give up relationships, husbands, families, and mothers and fathers and lands and all those things. And Jesus said, if you give those things up for the kingdom, you'll receive 100-fold. That means you're going to receive natural things. He never said that if you give up these things, He's going to bless you more spiritually or forgive you or heal you. Or those things are not based on works, and they will never be based on works. There are benefits to sowing and giving and sacrificing and doing things for God, but not these things. Forgiveness is not one of those. You don't earn forgiveness. It's always through His blood, the forgiveness of sins. Now, I wanted to look in Luke chapter 18 and look at this parable, Luke chapter 18 and verse 9. We actually started out the teaching with this parable, and I really like this because it puts forgiveness and these things in perspective and the way people view it. And so I'm going to read through this again. Luke chapter 18 verse 9. "And also He spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others." So that's what we're talking about here is trusting in themselves, gaining it yourself, getting forgiveness and justification because of what you've done. And one of the things that Jesus attempted to make clear through parables and encounters with people, including the woman caught in adultery, one of the things that He wanted to make clear is that everyone needs forgiveness. Everyone. And what He's making clear here is that no one gets it by earning it. You can't work your way into it. And everyone needs forgiveness, and no one has greater access to it than anyone else. No matter whether they've been good or bad, or really bad, no one has more right to be forgiven and to be redeemed than anyone else. We're all in the same boat. We're all sinners, and we all need forgiveness. But people love to divide ourselves up. It's just human nature. I said this before, and it bears. It's my illustration, so I guess I can use it as much as I want. But we know what it takes to be saved. Normally you would have an invitation in a church service and have people come forward and they would pray the salvation prayer. They would confess Jesus as Lord, and you accept His forgiveness, your new life in Him by faith. And there's no payment made. It's just a faith proposition. That is so simple that some people can't. It's too simple for them. And people would rather have some sort of work, some sort of feat or effort, or do something that's measurable. So, to tell people that salvation is yours by faith, it's totally a faith exchange. If you were to tell people that if you come to church and walk around the church 7 times, you can be saved, I guarantee you people would be lined up outside the church to do that, because it's something you can do. You can measure it and you can get it done. And you'd have people lined up waiting to walk around the church. And then you'd have people walk around the church and brag about it. You'd have people say, "Did you walk around the church 7 times?" "Yes, I did." "Well, I walked around 8.
In this series, you'll learn incredible truths revealed in God's Word about the doctrine of forgiveness so you can say goodbye to guilt and shame. Visit gregfritz.org to download the MP3s and watch the streaming video for free by entering code FREE at checkout.